Our next topic will be solving linear equations, and as you first look at this, you might think to yourself, wait a minute, this is algebra. What is this doing in a geometry course? Well, being able to solve equations is a very important skill that will help you be successful in geometry as well. So let's just review a few basics here. Number one, one thing you want to think about as you're solving equations is to simplify, which means combine like terms, and I'll show you in a minute what this might look like. You want to keep equations balanced. That means whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. You want to move variables to one side of the equation. So typically you'll have x's, say for instance, and you'll have a whole bunch of numbers, so you want to get the x's on one side and the numbers on the other. And then also undo operations. So for instance, what's the opposite of add? Well, it's subtract. So what's the opposite of multiply? It's divide, things like that. So let's go ahead and take a look here at this first example, and it says solve for x. So we are going to try to get all the x's on one side and the numbers on the other. And the first thing you might notice as you look at this is that on the left side of the equation we have 5x and we also have a 3x. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this first thing up here called simplify. So we're going to combine like terms. So what is 5x plus 3x? Well, it's 8x. So we can simplify the left side of the equation and become 8x plus 7. Now on the right side you'll notice that we have a 7 and we also have a negative 20. So you can combine those two together. So what is 7 minus 20? Well, it's negative 13. So this becomes 4x minus 13. So now that we've simplified things here, what we want to do is get the x's on one side and the numbers on the other. So let's go ahead right now and let's subtract 4x and on both sides, because whatever we do to one side we must do to the other. And that way when we're done here we're going to end up having 4x on the left side and no x's on the right side. And since we're going to do that, let's get it so that the numbers are on the right side of the equation. So let's subtract 7 and subtract 7. So when we do this here, what's going to happen is we're going to wind up with 4x on this side, and 7 minus 7 is 0, so there's nothing left here. 4x minus 4x is 0x, and then negative 13 and a negative 7 is negative 20. So now we're at the point now where we're left with 4x equals negative 20. And basically at this point we want to undo 4 times x. So what's the opposite of multiply? Well, it's divide. So we're going to divide this side by 4, and we're going to divide this side by 4, because whatever we do to one side we must do to the other. 4 divided by 4 is 1, so this becomes 1x, and I can just write x instead. And negative 20 divided by 4 will be negative 5, and that is your answer. Now secondly here, we're going to look at one other equation here, and in this case it's a little more complicated because as you notice here it says solve for y. So we're not solving for x, we're solving for y. So always go back and look at the directions to see what you're solving for. Don't assume it's going to be x. And in this case here we have y's and we also have x's. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to make it so that the y's are all on one side. So we have 4x plus 2y equals 20, and the way we can do that is somehow we need to move this 4x off this side. And so what's the opposite of 4x? Well, it's minus 4x. So what we're going to end up doing here is we're going to subtract 4x on both sides. And when we do that, 4x minus 4x is 0x, so we don't have to write anything, and this becomes 2y. And on the right side we get negative 4x plus 20. Okay? These are not like terms, you can't combine them together, so it doesn't become like, for instance, 16x or something like that. It's negative 4x plus 20. Now our final step is we have 2y, and we need to solve for y. So we need to make this into y, and the only way to do that is to divide by 2, because what is 2 divided by 2? Well, it's 1y. So if we divide by 2, we're going to get y. So we need to divide this one by 2 and this term by 2. So both terms have to get divided by 2 here. So negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2x, and 20 divided by 2 is 10. And there you have it. That is going to be our answer right there. Y equals negative 2x plus 10. So those are some basics on how to solve equations, and learning how to do this will serve you very well in geometry.